Hi, everybody. My name is Richard Lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. Welcome to a better lifestyle. This is the podcast. Welcome to a better lifestyle. Today we're having a roundtable on with women, so women at their best. So it's gotta we gotta talk about women empowerment, personal development, and much more. So it was a little bit chaotic with the people that were supposed to be in the panel, but it works out okay. So we're gonna have a good time. So please, I'd like to for my guests to introduce themselves. I'm gonna start with Lori. Just give a brief, like in a minute, who you are, what you do, and how long have you been doing it. So we'll start with Lori.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to be here. Yes, I'm Lori Wallace, and I'm the founder and CEO of Career Ecology, which is work life empowerment, more than balance, even for job seekers, those that are in the liminal space. I've been an executive recruiter for 23 years. And through that time, have seen quite a bit of despair and really realized as of 2016 that it was time for us to change that experience for job seekers and bring them forward so they really understood this chaotic system. So here to bring the love and practical and poetic, and I'm glad to be here.
All right. Terry?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so pleased to be here and join these two ladies. I am the founder and CEO of the Thriving Leader Collaborative, and we host an annual retreat and we do workshops. And I personally do one-on-one coaching, as do my colleagues. And our mission is to create a greater intersection between well-being and leadership. We're all going to win when we get to the point where we're prioritizing our well-being, particularly that leaders are, and then they're normalizing that with others as well. And as Richard knows, I wrote a book on called The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. So I'm also just a little obsessed with our word choices as well.
Nice. Janice?
Thank you, Richard. And I'm sorry I confused the issue, but we're all here that are meant to be here at this time, and it's always meant to work out the way it's supposed to work out. So I'm sorry if I confused the issue, but I'm glad that I'm here, and it's so nice to be here. I'm coming to you from Vancouver, BC, and I'm a relationship marketing specialist. I have my own business. JanicePorter.com is where you'll find me. I teach people how to use LinkedIn, basically as a relationship tool, how to generate leads for their businesses, how to connect with people and network through that platform, because it's very underutilized in that respect. Then I also teach people how to nurture relationships that they've built by using an online system of greeting cards and gifts that sends real cards and gifts in the mail. So you get that tangible touch, which takes people from their head to their heart. And I always think that's so important. And I have a podcast also called Relationships Rule. And I'm very curious about Terry's book, because I'm in a different way, though. I think I'm all about words and etymology and so on of words as well. I know yours is probably more about the words you choose to saying the right thing, but I still think it has a connection. So just wanted to make that connection, and that's me.
Great. So we'll start. So can you tell us a little bit? I'll start with Lori. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how can I say that, from where you started at the beginning, and how was your journey until where you are today professionally?
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to just go ahead and acknowledge it's interesting. I think we three women, you brought us together and we are in sync. Oh my gracious. I just heard head to mind. Everything I do is about heart mindfulness and language. I'm a poet. Language is critical. So I'm loving these women. Thank you, Richard. The fire in my belly, I've come to realize now in my 50s, I'm in this this is a spectacular time actually to be a woman, and during this time, because we come forward as wise. Maybe we've even had children. Maybe we've even lasted through long relationships. We've probably gone through therapy. We've had jobs. We've shown up for a world pre-social media, post-social media, and we're coming forward to say, hey, this is the time for the feminine to be reinstated with the masculine in every body and every person. And I've really lived that. I would say that I was raised to be a compliant woman from a very 50s oriented father. And coming forward to that in a world that really needed authenticity, I found my way after September 11th and the trauma of that, and being 8 months pregnant and almost birthing my child on the floor with that trauma, that I needed to practice radical kindness. And destiny led me to be a recruiter. But I found that recruiters were salespeople and they were using people. And it was devastating because these people are coming forward in moments of their deepest trauma, maybe even a layoff or a toxic boss, or a career that was just not going anywhere. So I quit that and I started my own agency to transform headhunting into human connection, and flooded it really with these feminine values of vulnerability, of patience, of neutrality, and deep service. And so that's what I've been doing for 20 years through the Great Recession, through all the culture, climate, COVID challenges. And I'm excited because I keep inspiring women, and I'm excited to hear what we hear from these two as well, that I think those of us that have entered into a place where we can guide others, that we can really speak now of the heart, of the feminine aspects. And just 6 years ago, if you had asked me how I would coach one of my candidates when they were doing one of those psychology tests, before being receiving an offer, I would have said to them, make sure you answer those questions. You give results that are based on your work self, basically your man self, your masculine self. And now I can say to women, answer it holistically as you are, because that invitation of empathy and patience and kindness is being called in, I'd say, radically right now. So it's a wonderful time to be in this space. So that's sort of my little arc.
Terry?
Thank you, Terry.
That's fantastic. Yes, we are so aligned. So to answer your question, first I have so many things to say to Lori.
Me too.
I'm going to put this out there right now, is that I just started listening to a book called On Our Best Behavior. And when you said about your upbringing and such, you're going to love this book. It's by a woman named Elise Lonen. And anyway, so for all the listeners, it's a really fantastic book. I'm only about halfway through, but everything that Lori was just talking about, and how women sort of acknowledge how we got to where we are and then move forward. And so it's time. So I had a leadership career with Four Seasons Hotels, and then, kind of moved along up that ladder, let's say, being the only suit at the table. I'm sorry, only skirt at the table. Yeah, it was a suit, but yeah, different one. And I learned a lot in that experience. And then I had a very bizarre transition after decades. Well, I had my own business for 15 years doing leadership development and such, and coaching. And then I transitioned to healthcare. And so it was fantastic for me. It was very much a calling for me to use the skill sets that I have to be able to make a difference in the life of those who are vulnerable, of patients. And so I coached physicians, I coached leaders, worked my way through a kind of another set of ladders, let's say, and also male dominated in the leadership top. Not healthcare in general is very, very much a female occupation, let's say. So anyway, so I did that. And then in late 2019, I went back to my own business. Just the timing was fantastic. Finished my book, which was published in the summer of 2020. And now, as I said, I'm incredibly passionate, along with the team that I have, in creating that intersection, so that it's not just women, but it's all people are prioritizing well-being, and really turned into a bit of a neuroscience geek, and gotten myself educated on, and I can't get enough of it, on the difference that the neuroscience makes. And it helps us understand like I kind of, in a way, it helps us understand some things we already knew. But I go deeper into helping people understand that the way that we decide, the way we think about balance can be disrupted. And so we can be the fulcrum, we can focus on things that we want to focus on. And so anyway, here I am now talking mostly about productivity and how we lead our lives, and in order to create more joy, in order to thrive. So that's what I do.
Janice?
I can't follow either of these things. My goodness, these women are amazing. I just feel like my little world is so little compared to that. So amazing, amazing work that it sounds like both of you are doing. I just want to throw into the works that it's just sort of karmic or something. I don't know. I went for a walk yesterday and I was listening to a podcast, and it was Jana Kuchar, who's a marketer. I don't know if you know her work, the Gold Digger podcast. And she's a huge marketer and has done really, really well. She was interviewing, she doesn't usually interview people, and she was interviewing Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife, if I have to put it in that context, if you don't know who she is. And she's just written a book called Worthy. And that was really what they were talking about, her book. And Jana Kuchar had gone through some stuff about being worthy in her career and in her life, and because she had some trauma around having children, and Jada as just one of those interesting women who, has had fame and fortune, but not always been happy. And so she's always been searching. So that thing about being worthy, and they were talking about how it's so different today for women, in young women today compared to what their journey was. And it's just exactly what you were talking about, Lori, which is really interesting. So, my background is teaching. I was a school teacher for many years, elementary school, loved teaching, loved kids. But I couldn't stand the bureaucracy in that system. And I ended up moving away from teaching and becoming a corporate trainer, which is kind of funny because really it's still teaching. The kids are just bigger, it's the kind of thing. So I did that for quite a long time. But I did it as a contractor because I had my second daughter at home who was very involved in athletics, and I wanted to be able to come and go and do to help and be there for her, because I couldn't miss a game or whatever. It wouldn't be I couldn't. So, I did that until I didn't, because contracting has a life of its own, and I had a pretty good gig with it in this space. I was in the telecommunications space, but I also taught soft skills. And so when I left, it was like, now I have to reinvent myself. What am I going to do? And I knew I didn't want a job for the same reason. I didn't want to be locked into that 9-to-5 thing, but I also didn't have any background in business. I taught school. And then when I was a trainer, they sent us on our jobs. I didn't have to go find them. So it was an interesting transition, and cost my husband and I, really, because I didn't have that thing to fall back on that my dad had always put in the back of my mind and things like that. But I was much happier person being my own boss, and I'm a lifelong learner. So everything was a learning experience, when I started my own business. And so I started really in the network marketing space and didn't find a product line that I really identified with until I came to this product line that I'm still with today, 15 years later, really is Send Out Cards, which is the system I use for my clients and with my clients for staying in touch. And then someone introduced me to LinkedIn. And through that little bit of learning that I went through at the beginning, I realized that, remember that probably back then there was Facebook, and that was about it, Facebook and LinkedIn. And I didn't like Facebook. I guess my generation, maybe, I don't know, I didn't want my whole life on there, and it wasn't comfortable for me. But LinkedIn felt more comfortable. And I saw it as an opportunity to teach again, which that's my passion. I love to teach. And so that's what I actually turned it into. So I'm very happy when I'm teaching people. And So that's what I do. I do a lot of one-on-one training, and it's working with my clients, not for them, so to speak. And then showing them giving them the power to use the system to grow their own businesses. So I do work mostly with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners, realtors, mortgage brokers, people that are self-employed in that respect as well. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but there you go.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's good. What would you say to a single mother? Let's say they have a single mother who has one kid or two kids or even three kids.
Oy vey, that's what I'd say first. Oy vey.
Yeah, so they're in a situation. Let's say they wanna turn their life around. Like where they are right now, they're not satisfied with the career. It could be overwhelming sometimes. What would you say to a single mother like that? We'll start with Lori.
Oh, thank you for asking. A single mother. I hear you touching upon something, and that is that there's this question about meaning. And, as a recruiter through the years, I ask people, they tell me what their job is, and I'll say, what's the purpose of that? And they won't necessarily know because they're just doing a job. And if I ask below, what's the purpose? They'll say, well, what meaning do you drive? I don't know. And then if you go, where does the fire burn in you that makes you do that? Obviously, I'm hearing the burn with all these women. Mm-hmm. We burn for those of us that are mothers. We burn for our children and to care for them. And they are our primary meaning. Mm-hmm. But we also have another meaning as a woman at this time, especially now, where our entire world here in the United States, and I'd say the world, has been formed by men. Women were not around the table for the Constitution, for the forming of any of our financial institutions, education, medicine, any of it. Now it's amazing what we've got, but it's unbalanced because it doesn't have the feminine perspective, which resides in men as well. So when I say this, I bring this up because I would say to women, especially a single mother, is nurture that flame because you love your children, you have so much meaning, but you might be feeling also that there's something natural that you have here to contribute to the ecosystem of us. Something especially at a time when women's voices and presence and energy is gifting the world and men to come back to their hearts. So there's a process of networking. Thank you, Janice. Mm-hmm. And coming in and volunteering locally with a networking group, finding people that you can talk to and you can express out loud something that you might think is crazy, but you absolutely love. Maybe you want to be a librarian. Mm-hmm. So there's this process of just getting certified. There's a process during the years where you may not have time to actually have a full career, or you're a single mother. So actually you do have one. So maybe it's that career that you have is essential to keep everybody alive and kicking. But if it's not the one that really lights your fire, you still can be connecting, networking, and developing skills. So when the time comes and these children do evolve out of the nest, you're ready to fully flower. And it's not in a linear way. You have now holistically prepared yourself to enter into the world with this other gift that is yours and uniquely yours. And you'll find them on LinkedIn. You'll find those people there, and you'll find them locally in groups like NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners. You could go even if you don't have your own business and you have a job. You can still go and meet these people, see how these women have started their own businesses, and you can gig it and you can dream big. And there's people like us, Janice and Terre, we're all here to have conversations and to listen to the dreams. So sometimes it's just permission and then connecting.
Could I speak to that, Richard?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because I have one of those people. I have a daughter who is a single mom, and she's struggling, and she's an introvert, and she has a job that's paying her good money, but it's a job to her. It's not climbing any corporate ladder or anything like that. But she's struggling. She has some health issues at the moment. And so and I'm the person that you were just talking about, that if that was me, I'd be out there, I would be doing that. That's the last thing she wants to do. So it's really hard to get someone like her to work on herself and look towards anything past getting that kid to bed at night. You know what I mean? Because she's 4 and she's a handful to boot. And so as much as I'm not, as much as I love what you had to say, it's not that easy for some of them. And I, I cry inside all the time about her. So I just had to say that. But I believe that you have to work on yourself, and you have to work for yourself to make those changes. You just have to see it first. And that's the hardest thing, is to get her to see it. So thank you for listening.
Terry?
Yeah, I'm going to circle back all the way to what Lori said at the beginning, is that the fire, what's burning for the single mom is the child, and that is their life work, the way I see it, right? That is my life work. Mm-hmm. And I can talk to you about the career decisions that I've made, but the decisions relevant to the 2 humans that are here on earth because of my choice to be a mother is everything. And so making, maybe even like, let's say for your daughter, thinking about making great choices that impact them, and then allowing that to guide what's in your heart and what you do and the effort that you make forward for work and such. I've met so many people, and I know you all have too, that are incredibly successful, incredibly confident. And when you ask them why, they say, I had a single mother. Mm-hmm. I'm the product of a single mom. And so if I were a single mom, I'd search for those stories. I'd make the connections, like Lori was saying, and then I would surround myself with those strong people and pay close attention to the decisions that I'm making. That's and good. The words that I'm choosing, right? Because it makes such an impact on there's a whole section of my book about the words that we choose with our kids, and how they are woven throughout your life, and they make a difference to what you believe about yourself and what you believe about the world.
That's so beautiful. Can I say something, Richard, on that?
No problem.
I so appreciate all of this too. And Janice, boy, did you bring up an important concept, and that is introverts. So I'm married to a deeply melancholic man, and thank goodness, because he showed me the introversion and the melancholy, and how they're poets, and they see the risk first. There was a time that I'd be like, just be happy. Let's just be an extrovert. Let's go out. So that depth of feeling, to have a child also. It's interesting, Richard, because you did bring up about mothering, and you brought up about single mothering. There's this other aspect that we can be a parent, or in this case, a mother of a child that's deeply sensitive. And I have a feeling it sounds like Janice's daughter's, or your grandchild, I guess I can say. My son was deeply sensitive. He couldn't, if I ever said to him, you have a timeout, he would feel like he's been abandoned in a field and he'll be eaten by wolves. He would cry a primal cry. That was not available to my son, given his sensitivity. And so what happened is that I learned how to be an attached mother. I changed because of my son. And I had him in the Waldorf school system because I knew my son, if he was in regular education, that he would, and he was taught to read when he was 4 or 5, that he would have fallen out of love of the world. So my process as a mom, our children teach us things. They crack us open so that we can be all we can be. And there are a lot of parents that just kind of force their children into whatever sort of discipline or whatever sort of box that, we've been taught all these years. And so something that I did do 2 years ago in the middle kind of COVID, I felt a draw to get certified in something called the Nurtured Heart Approach to Parenting by Howard Glasser. And I'm telling you, I put it in when my child was 19, and I used it with my partner as well. And it's this whole concept of how we want to first give positive energy, not toxic positivity is a big difference, but how to catch our children in the act of doing something really good. So the child starts to kind of understand who they are in this world, what's really complex. And then we still hold good structure. They need that. And then, still have necessary boundaries or any sort of consequences. But through sometimes, and I wonder, Janice, is sometimes when a child is gifted to us who is very emotionally sensitive or has some other sort of physical issues, a lot of times I find as a parent, there's something that we're going to gain out of that, some sort of meaning or purpose. And there can be an expert or a group of moms that have studied it as well. So I join you as a grandmother. I'm not a grandmother yet, but I join you in this space because I've sort of lived through it. And we almost divorced over my son's issues. It was hard, but it's part of my becoming.
Thank you. Thank you for
that. Sometimes, yeah, I could say sometimes people have goals or dreams or visions, but that they want to accomplish, but they don't have the resources sometimes around them at the moment to achieve those goals or dreams. What would you say? How would they overcome that, like without having the resources around them to do what they want to do? So how can they overcome that? I'll start with Lori.
I just was thinking when you were saying that we are so lucky right now with how many things are available online that are free. Today, you can set up a website for free on Wix, and you can actually make a logo for free on Canva. You can come on to Zoom and have 40-minute conversations for free.
Or there's a new platform now where you can have 90 minutes free.
90 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow. Yes. So my dreams that I had in my 20s, I would have had to pay somebody to do my website. And it would have taken me it would have been at least $10 to $20 to $30 to $50,000. Right now, you can go onto Wix and you can pick a template and you can be up. And then you can go onto LinkedIn and you can put it out there. So again, it takes a little bit of life force, a little bit of mentoring and support, but it is there. So there isn't one area I can think of now. I can't think of one barrier to being able to just putting up a little storefront in a way. So I would just kind of stop there for a second. I just want to kind of acknowledge all those practicals. This is a different time.
Janice?
Yeah, I think that's amazing because it's so true. And you have to think about, for me, it's all about, I don't know why I have this phrase from way back, but it's not what you know, it's who you know. So when you're in that situation, you need to be networking. You need to be talking to the right people, but sometimes it takes a little twists and turns to find the right people to help you on your way, and not let money be the barrier to start with, because things happen. You hear the stories all the time. I'm a great fan of Shark Tank, and the stories that come with the people on Shark Tank are unbelievable sometimes, because they are the true entrepreneurs, the people that see their vision and want it no matter what. They find a way. And so it's just building that strength and building your network that will help move forward.
Terry, what would you have to say about that?
Well, I totally agree with that networking part, because I think that for me, it's like doors opening. So you speak to a person, a door opens, walk through it. So if another door opens, walk through it, right? But I'll back up a little bit and say, and then think about the word choices around the vision. So most people, they're not clear enough. They're not specific and clear enough about exactly what they want. So do a vision board, get it out there, get pictures, and then take that grand vision and refine it into actions, like clear steps. I'm going to do this by the end of the year. And this is what I coach my clients. I'm like, okay, great. So that's a lovely idea. What are you going to do about it? Right? So let's be super clear about next steps. And so maybe what you're going to do quarter over quarter. And you've had people on your show before, Richard, that talk about the keys to success. And it always starts with, you have the vision. And from that vision, you distill a solid plan. And you start from that plan, start setting goals. So if I have a quarterly goal, now I'm going to break it down into actions that I'm going to do each week. So I might network with one person per week between now and the end of the year, type of thing. And keep that going. And then when the doors open, walk through them.
Love it.
So on that same line, sometimes people want to become their own boss. So if someone wants to start a business, but they fail at the first attempt, the fear of failure, how would someone would deal with that? Because they might not believe themselves that they could do it, and if they do, and if they fail, it might be a real blow to them. So, what would you say about that, Lori?
Oh my gosh, I have so many failures. My husband always tells me, he's just like, oh, another idea. How many URLs do you have? Usually he comes up to me every day and he's like, you're weird. And I'm like, oh, thanks. During the great 2008-9 recession, I had my single girlfriends coming to me and saying, I wish I had a partner. I'm afraid. I have to tell you, the fear during the Great Recession was a different sort of fear than we experienced with COVID. COVID was sort of let's bake bread, we're all in this together. And then it devolved into something, so chaotic and awful. But it was initially, it felt different. And the Great Recession was, I actually had a client that was murdered by his employee for fear of being laid off. And I remember the fear and I felt it. And my girlfriends are saying, I wish I had a partner. So you know what I did is I found somebody who had been laid off, who did high tech, and I suggested, why don't we make a dating site? I want to do it differently because they all hated Match. They said they were going to hold their nose and get on there. Yeah. And I said, okay, I want to do something that is deep, that actually connects kind of through passion or companionship or whatever they're looking for, but it's going to be human to human. It's not going to be matching by photos and whatever. And I called it Kula Love. And Kula is a word that means like community of love. It's Sanskrit. I had an artist do everything. I paid her for that. Everything was free. We built up this gorgeous site. It was ready to go. I had my single friends waiting. And then I had the website tested in Ireland with like an audit testing company. And a day later, they come to me and they said, you could probably fit 5 people on the site before it breaks.
Oh, dear.
I had worked on it for 2 years. Oh. And I realized that this programmer, every time I asked him to make a change, he made the change and left the old code. So it was complete spaghetti. And in that day, I had to shed and I had to trust as an antagonistic mentor that this was not the direction for me. Because truly, if I find out that a woman gets harmed on a date with a stranger, as sensitive as I am, I may not be able to live with that. So I think I actually kind of was guided, and you have to trust this world because 50% is our engagement and the other 50% is the mystery. So things can break down or go in the opposite direction. And we have to trust that because I was fully engaged. And then fast forward career ecology. Well, I know a lot of things about like how to not make that mistake again. There was a lot that I learned and it's really served me with career ecology. So embrace those great failures and know that it's still part of like your own solopreneur MBA program, and gather what you can. And then let those scars, be proud of those stories. Because, they're pretty outrageous sometimes.
Wow.
Janice?
Yeah. I mean, my journey on becoming a solopreneur really and a business owner was hit and miss. And it always costs you money along the way because you're trying to learn. And it doesn't, I don't know if it helps or hurts that I'm a curious person, but I'm one of those, the squirrel syndrome. Let's try it over here. Oh, that one sounds good. Let's try that. And so, I've learned a little bit more about being cautious about that in my old age, but I still am curious about, I'd love to take that program. It sounds really like it would be helpful, but everything, there's too much. So you have to be clear. As Terry said, you have to be clear on your own goals and your own purpose and all of that to keep you on that single focus maybe, but it's the mistakes and it's the failures that move you up for the next time and make you, I don't know, that. In fact, in that podcast I was listening to yesterday, I just remembered when one of you was talking that one of the things they were talking about was you don't learn from success, you learn from failure. And the other thing they were talking about was the masculine, feminine energy, which we talked about earlier, and it just came to me. Yeah. So, interesting.
Hear that podcast.
Yeah.
Terry?
Yeah, I have people ask me occasionally, particularly since I told you about how I was the only woman a lot of my career. You get so confident. Like people ask me that all the time. And I say, well, there's only one way, through failure, right? So you try something, you fail, you learn from it. Well, there's like a choice when that happens. You can be woe is me and go down, spiral downward, or you can be like, okay, well, that didn't work, like Lori said. And I was saved from something that potentially wasn't right for me. So she saw the upside. And so I can go on the upside of it. And when you choose to see the upside, you're building confidence. Straight up. You're building
resilience.
Yep.
That's it. 100%.
So yeah. So let's talk a little neuroscience though. So the words people chose for us when we were kids, our own internal narrative, I call it your personal podcast. It's playing 24/7. So we got this narrative going on. And what happens is when we start to hear a narrative that doesn't serve us and that is negative, and we start to spiral down, there's a point at which I call it the pivot point, where we typically launch onto I call it the yellow brick road, like the known way that we always go and what we always think and what we always believe, because this narrative is so ingrained. But at this pivot point, that's the point of choice where we can say, oh, okay, well, hang on. Does it really serve me to believe that? Is there any value in me believing that about myself or about another? And at that pivot point, that's when I choose to replace the words, replace the story, and start in a positive way, create my own positive spiral. And that's where, as I'm spiraling up, I'm pulling in the confidence. I'm pulling in the joy of the sheer experience as I go.
Beautiful.
In the process of achieving and going where you want to be in life, personal development, they say sometimes it's key. Some people might need it. Maybe some people might not want to do it. But what would you say about personal development as the people evolve and they move forward? I'll start with Lori.
Yeah, it's important. I think the thing that comes to mind for me around that is what Gabor Mate, who's written his book, The Wisdom of Trauma. What he talks about is that it is a very normal part of our human condition, and it's actually part of the design that we develop coping mechanisms when we're a child, and it can be to something that feels traumatic to us. But it's not abuse necessarily. Like Gabor Mate, when he was 1 year old, and he was in somewhere near Austria or something during the Nazi times, his mother gave him to a stranger and asked her to take him over the country line to save his life. And to him, that felt like complete abandonment. But actually, his life was saved. And the mother, about a month later, found him, but he rejected her. And it took a while. So he actually developed that coping mechanism. And he says, when I'm a young man in my 70s, which is hilarious, he's showing us that this still happens. His wife was late from picking him up at the airport, and he was upset. So he chilled her out for 3 days. He went into his coping mechanism, and she finally said, snap out of it. And he's like, whoa. So what is really beautiful and key for us in terms of personal development is to be curious and to understand without any shame, what are my coping mechanisms? And for me, I was a people pleaser. I was compliant. And what happened with that? Well, I married my beautiful beloved when I was 24, but he came from a family that kept a lot of secrets, or actually, no, his case, I think they were more outwardly aggressive. And he was used to that. And I was always saying, let me try to fix, the situation. And I wasn't always sharing how upset I was about something. And I actually created a marriage and an environment that was built on a lack of safety or a sense of security. So we finally found the therapist that understood cluster B personality disorders and things that we were dealing with in the coping mechanisms in our 40s. So we it's not like we didn't try. We had all of these other therapists, but they They kept seeing me as the sparkly girl, and they kept telling my husband to just breathe deep for 10 seconds. They didn't understand my coping mechanism because I was sparkly or whatever. So, find someone and don't stop until you say, I want to know my coping mechanisms, and I want to shed them like a snake sheds their skin. I want to shed them like a caterpillar because I want to fly, and I know they're in the way. So get curious. We all have them, all of them. And there's no shame on the parents. Everybody's surviving the human condition, and we develop it like Gabor Mate. We develop it for just survival, but it doesn't serve you as an adult. That is the first place I would say to start in personal development.
Janice?
I totally love that whole world of personal development, and I've personally been done some work in those personal development courses along the way, and actually made me think of one incident where, in some of these outward bound type courses, where you're in I was on a ranch for a week in Northern California, and there was a lot of these trust exercises and things like that. And I remember having to do a thing where you had to climb like 50 feet and stand on top of a pole. And I was afraid of heights to begin with. And I wasn't young when I did this. And I was like crying before I even climbed up the thing. And, everyone's supporting you and helping you do this. And I knew that I wasn't, in my mind, I already said, I'm not standing on that thing because you can see it wobbling, right? And you're harnessed and everything. But anyway, I knew that I could get to the top as long as I didn't look down. So I got all the way to the top of this 50-foot pole. And then you kind of have to let go to be belayed down if you're coming down that way instead of jumping off this thing, which wasn't happening for me. I was so proud of myself that I got to that point. And it never made it easier, though, the next time I had to do something like that. I was still just as afraid. But the confidence, as to Terry's point, the confidence did start to build. But one of the things that did for me, when and there were pictures, there's proof, right? That daughter of mine, the one who's a single mom, the one who's the introvert, the one who she's not worked on herself. Let's put it that way. When she was away at a basketball camp at university, the bonding and whatever, they did these exercises. And one of them was to climb the top of this 50-foot pole and catch this trapeze and jump, to it. And she was petrified. And she's standing in this lineup of girls to do this. And it was in the afternoon. They'd done some other exercises that weren't quite as horrific. And she's in the line, and somebody said to her, I didn't think you'd even do this, Marissa. And she looked at them, and she said, my mother did it. I can do it. And she did more than what her mother did. She did it. And she, grabbed the trapeze and she did it. And I still to this day have to go back to that for her and say, look what you did. And you can do it, whatever it is, because that meant more for me that she did it than me doing it. But it makes me cry because she needs that often to understand, that she has that in her. And so personal development is huge in my world. I just think it's so important, whether it's, doing those kinds of things, or whether it's, reading a book that takes you on a journey somewhere, within yourself as well. I just think it's amazing.
Terry?
Yeah, I do too. And I've stood on top of that pole too, Janice. And
Me too.
Horrifying. Yeah.
I'm not surprised, by the way,
Yeah.
ladies.
I do
Won't
it
be
too.
doing it again anytime soon.
No,
Just saying.
Me neither.
It's a once is enough. All right, Richard, have you done it? Have you done that thing where you get to the top?
No.
All right. You got to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
And the walking on hot coals and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So what I want to add to this part is and I think Laura used this word, is judgment. Like you said, lack of judgment. And I feel like that's why so many people don't embark on personal development, is they're judging themselves, or they're feeling judged by others. And there's no value in the judging for any of the parties, the person feeling judged or providing the judging. So be curious, as Lori said, be curious. Show up in order to bear witness and to observe. So if you observe that you lack confidence in such and such, then fix that by embarking on a class or something that you want to know more about. So when we can shed our judgment, then we can show up ready to observe, witness, and then put in place the plan that would help me overcome what I'm observing, what I'm witnessing about myself. So I feel like that's a better way for people to look at the whole concept of personal development.
Mm.
I'm gonna go on last questions. You guys can answer that in 2 minutes each. What would you say for a woman who wants to be all that they could be in the world, in the marketplace? So I'll start with Lori.
My message about that is this word is authenticity.
Mm.
You know, I think we've spent so many centuries of trying to show up to support a world that was a man's world. And right now it really is, who are you as a woman? What is your own voice? Meryl Streep recently was on stage. I don't know. Have you guys seen this going around LinkedIn right now?
Mm.
There was this movie about the head of Washington Post. What was that woman's name again? Can't believe I'm spacing. But the owner of that during the time of
Bill Bradley's wife.
No, but the head of the Washington Post.
Yeah.
And she, it wasn't maybe, but it was her family's paper, and it was the time of the Pentagon Papers, and they decided to put them out. And she played that woman, and she made that decision. And when she was on stage with the actors, and they were asking questions similar to what you just asked, Richard, she said, we're in a world where everybody and women, we know the language of men. We can speak it. We can dream it. But men don't really know the language of women yet, and they don't dream it. And so how can the world know the language of women? How can we know our own language unless we have an interior relationship, until we start to get curious about ourselves and start to I would say, number one, get reconnected with the wild. A big separation between a woman knowing herself is really the world separation from the wildness of nature. All of this about separating us into just an ego state so that women don't even feel comfortable to talk about feelings or emotion or intuition has a lot to do with the Industrial Revolution and the split between the world and nature, where nature was even, I think, Byron, what's his name? Sorry, my head today. But anyways, this guy, he wrote a whole paper about the idea of lift the skirt of nature. And it was all this whole thing about overcoming the feminine. So there's a lot right now in coming into your own as a woman, and you can do it through nature. Walk in the wild, get close to an ocean, and allow it to bring you back to life. Find your power, find your voice, find your passion again. And bring it to men, bring it to women, bring it to children, bring it back to the world. But it's a very poetic first step to recognize it hasn't really been there. So you've got to turn inward first. And I think nature is a good way through.
Janice?
The word that's coming to me is collaboration, because I've noticed, particularly over the last year or so on LinkedIn, and some of the women that I've actually interviewed on my podcast, talking about, that was my word for 2023, was collaboration. And I think that that's partly because women and the way women think and the way women do business is becoming, is rising, and people are listening, and that because of the crazy mess the world is in now, there has to be a different way. And I think this is where people are starting to listen to what women have to say and how women approach things, because that's very different from men in so many ways. And before I forget, Terry, I wanted to mention to you a woman I met and interviewed who'd just written a book called Keeping Your Seat at the Table. And it's brilliant. And she's talking about women in their 50s and beyond. Maybe they've taken some time off from the corporate world and now they want back, but they can't get their seat back at the table. It's really interesting. So Yeah. And so there's so many women stepping up and talking about this now that it is kind of not a revolution, an evolution, and that's happening quite quickly right now. And I think also, you mentioned a word, Lori, at the beginning that reminded me of another favorite podcast of mine you mentioned the word wise and being wiser. And those of us who are mature women, we have a lot to offer, and a lot to offer the younger women coming up as well. And because of our wisdom, and this podcast, which is kind of a funny take on it, is Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld and Veep fame. It's called Wiser Than Me. And she interviews women. She's 62, and she interviews women who are older than her and wiser than her. And it's very good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love it.
Good.
Yeah.
Terry?
Well, I would say to the woman who wants to dream big and to have it all and, to follow her dreams, there's only one person that can make that happen, and that's you. So own it. Dream it big, do the vision board, set the goals, the things I talked about before, and don't let anybody or anything get in your way, including your own narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, for me, it's about an individual, woman or man. Sometimes women struggle more with this, owning what they're dreaming and saying that this is non-negotiable and here's where I'm going. And then you'll get there.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll wrap it up. It was excellent. So I'm very proud of those three women. Thank you, Lori, Janice, and Terry for accepting my invitation. I hope everybody who's listening, whether you're a woman or a man, if you're a man, you could give it to a lady, a young lady, a wife, a niece. I hope everybody found some value out of this roundtable. So thank you once again to my guests. And my name is Richard L'Esperance, and I go by the name of my man, Richard. This is the podcast, Welcome to a Better Lifestyle. And we'll see you on the next episode, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.